Well, the football season has finally started. Week 1 is in the books, and it was yet another very bad week for the New York football teams. And it's very frustrating because we have now seen this for years. In this video, I'm going to go over mostly the Jets and Giants game, but also recap the rest of the games around the league from NFL Week 1, make picks for Week 2 in the NFL, then get a little bit into the Mets and their series against the Blue Jays, the Yankees, their series against the Orioles, and how we feel about the Islanders going into an elimination game. So we will start off with the Giants because they were the more recent game on the Monday Night Football, and they had a tough loss, 26-16 to the Steelers, and they got a touchdown late for the Giants, so it really was worse than that. And what's frustrating about this Giants game is that early, it was a 10-3 ball game for New York. So, okay, you got something going. You have a nice play. Daniel Jones going to Darius Slayton. I think that's really important because we saw Slayton step up a lot last year as a target for Daniel Jones, someone that they had a good connection with, and that Darius Slayton made a lot of nice plays as a rookie last season. So, it's good to see him carry that over this season as he got 2 touchdowns in this game. So, you definitely have to be encouraged by the way Slayton played. The thing that concerns me about the Giants in this game, and also the Jets, we'll get to them next, is that we saw the same weaknesses. The Giants offensive line was not great. Daniel Jones was under a lot of pressure. He got sacked a few times this game and was under pressure on a lot of the other plays. And then the other thing that's also a really big problem is not creating running lanes for Saquon Barkley. All in all, Saquon Barkley finished with 15 carries for 6 yards with a long of 7. So you honestly can't do a much worse job of running the football, and that's really frustrating. Dion Lewis got 1 carry for 1 yard, so, that's kind of the way it went as far as running the ball. Daniel Jones got out of the pocket a little bit, 4 attempts for 22 yards, nothing crazy. You kind of expect more out of the Jason Garrett offense. We think of how well the Dallas Cowboys were able to run the ball in their years with Jason Garrett at the helm, but it goes to show you that sometimes it isn't even the system, it's more so the offensive line. The Dallas Cowboys were able to run the ball consistently good every single year because they had Tyron Smith and Travis Frederick and Zach Martin, and they just always had, good pieces around them, whether it was Ronald Leary or Doug Free. They always had a way of just rotating these different players that were productive enough that allowed the Cowboys to run the ball really well. If you're thinking maybe it's a Jason Garrett thing, well, it definitely isn't. It shows you, just once again, the value of offensive line. And the Giants tried to address that. Getting Andrew Thomas in the draft with their first-round pick, they knew that offensive line has been a big-time problem for years. So it makes sense that's why they used their first-round selection on an offensive lineman. And also, getting Fleming to play right tackle. And the Giants, similar to the Jets, as both of them struggled with offensive line, they had different combinations out there. And it's always tough for them because as far as communications are concerned, you had a sack where the player for the Steelers came in untouched. He came in completely free. No one blocked him, and he got Daniel Jones right up the middle. So stuff like that is going to happen. Miscommunication on the offensive line. It does take a while of guys playing together to really, understand not only the play calling, but also just each other. Being able to decipher different coverages and different rushes and just be able to block them enough for Daniel Jones to have time to get the ball to these other targets. And one of the guys that I'm really frustrated in his performance is Evan Ingram. I talked about him in the preview for the Giants and the predictions about how this is a very big year for him because Evan Ingram, we know the talent he has, but number one, can he stay on the field? That's always been the big problem for him. And he was on the field in this game, but he didn't have much to show for it. 7 targets, only 2 catches for 9 yards. That can't be happening if you're Evan Ingram. So that really is very disappointing and very frustrating. You expect a lot more out of him. Darius Slayton had the big game in the receiving core, 6 catches for 102 yards, a long of 41. We talked about the 2 touchdowns. Saquon Barkley, although he did struggle on the ground, he was better in the receiving game, having 6 catches for 60 yards, a long of 38. So Saquon Barkley had that one play where it was a low check down, and he took off over to the right side. He was making some defenders miss. And one thing that concerns me about Barkley is that despite how good he is as far as, making defenders miss and doing all these crazy moves, the hurdling. I know it's a great highlight when we see Saquon Barkley jump over defenders, but I think it's really risky, and I don't want to see Saquon doing that because he puts himself at a high chance of injury. We know Saquon Barkley got hurt last year, and he missed a pretty decent, middle part of the season. And I don't want to see that happen to him again because Saquon Barkley is extremely important to this Giants team, especially because they're an offensive-heavy team because we know it's not the defense, so we know it's not the offensive line. So is going to take the running back stepping up. We know Daniel Jones can do some different things, and that they have some good receivers. Guys like Slayton, Shepard, even, Barkley in the receiving game, Ingram. Golden Tate was out in this game. You really would like to have him, just have another big-time target for Daniel Jones to get the ball to, take some pressure off Slayton and Barkley and Ingram and these guys. But I just do want to see Saquon just be a little more careful and a little more judicious when he decides to hurdle over defenders, because that definitely does concern me. But, one of the other big things for the Giants in this game, the 2 turnovers by Daniel Jones, that can't happen. We saw a lot of penalties in this game. So, and once again, the defense wasn't great because eventually the Steelers got it going where they were getting touchdown after touchdown after touchdown. And we know that the Giants' main problem last year was the defense, and it didn't show me much improvement in this game. So I definitely am very concerned with them going forward. I wasn't high on them to begin with. I said in the preview, I'm predicting 4 wins for this team. And one of the wins I have is next week against the Chicago Bears, which we'll get to the Bears later, but I'm not feeling as confident about it because the Chicago Bears actually played pretty well yesterday. The Giants did not play so well tonight, so I am a bit concerned heading into that matchup because I can see it going either way. At first I thought, the Bears offense isn't that good. Giants, as bad as their defense is, they should be able to just do enough to win this game. But the Bears offense didn't look that bad. They made a really nice comeback against the Detroit Lions. So now I give the Bears a very good chance in that game. And I'm not exactly sure what's going to happen. So we'll get to that later. But let's get to the Jets. And you know what? I can't say I'm surprised in this result either. In both of my previews for the Jets and the Giants, I said that neither one of these teams have improved enough. They have been so disappointing and so abysmal the last few years. And they haven't really shown me much improvement. They haven't gone out there and made the necessary moves to really make their team better. And I think one of the big things for the Jets in this game and going forward this entire season is the trade of Jamal Adams. I think when you finally get a draft pick right and you finally get a big-time player, the fact that you have made this culture and this franchise so bad that your one-star player wants out in the worst way and you have to get rid of him, that really, it just tells you everything you need to know about the Jets. They're one of the teams that you want to talk about, like the Mets being unlucky. Well, obviously the Jets are very unlucky, and there's just so many things wrong with this team. Number one, Sam Darnold was not great. Don't get me wrong. 21 out of 35. He had an interception. He got sacked a few times. He was under a lot of pressure, similar to Daniel Jones. So once again, these offensive lines of New York teams struggling yet again, and that definitely is frustrating because the Jets took their first-round pick on Mekhi Becton, and it wasn't all his fault because the thing about the offensive line is that it's a collective unit. It's not just Mekhi Becton, it's not just Andrew Thomas, but it's these other guys on the offensive line stepping up and not having Sam Darnold and Daniel Jones under so much pressure. And similar to the Giants, the Jets were not able to run the football either. And again, that goes to your offensive line. Le'Veon Bell and Saquon Barkley were consistently getting tackled in the backfield. They didn't even have a chance to make a big play because they're already down on the ground as soon as they get the ball. So they are unable to generate any creative plays, any good lanes for these running backs to go through. And it's just so frustrating to see the same garbage week after week after week. A big problem for the Jets is that Le'Veon Bell got hurt in this game, so he's going to be out a couple weeks. And it's going to be interesting to see what they do at the running back position. Frank Gore, he got the same amount of carries as Le'Veon Bell. Still, Le'Veon Bell only 6 carries, really. I know he had a tough time running the ball, but only 6 times. You have to run the ball a little more than that. So that definitely was very puzzling, and we know that the play calling of Adam Gase is not exactly the greatest play calling in the league. No doubt about that. So Frank Gore, he's probably going to get the most of the carries as far as the team is concerned going forward. With Le'Veon Bell being down, having LaMichael Pierce not be healthy, that doesn't really help because he's supposed to be one of your running backs. He's out. Josh Adams, he had a touchdown late in this game. I wonder if they give him a chance. I'd rather have Josh Adams get more carries than Frank Gore, only because I know what Frank Gore is. He's not going to give me anything crazy. He's going to give me a few nice carries, but nothing too much. I need, a big-time player. I need a young guy to step up. Is there something to be had in Josh Adams? Probably not, but it's worth a try. So, will Adam Gase do that? I doubt it, but I would like to consider it at least. And, we talk about Daniel Jones and Sam Darnold being, under pressure. And I think it is just so important that for both of these quarterbacks, having mobility. Because we saw, if you watch the NFL the way it is now, just about every quarterback that's coming in nowadays, they're all mobile. They're all moving around, especially when they're under pressure. If nobody's open, they're taking off. Whether they get out of bounds, whether they try to make a defender miss or try to truck somebody, they are trying to get positive yardage and not take sacks and not try to, force some passes. That's another thing we saw from these quarterbacks. Try to force passes that end up becoming turnovers, whether it's an interception, an incompletion, there's a penalty. There's always something going on with these football teams. And Darnold's accuracy was not great. And the receivers of the Jets were not great dropping passes. And similar to the point I made earlier about Jamal Adams, letting Robbie Anderson go definitely was a major mistake made by the Jets, because finally you have this receiver who has a good connection with the young quarterback as Sam Darnold. So what do? Don't pay him. Let him walk away. So you replace him with Brashad Perriman, who for his career has been a failure, has been a disappointment, has a few good games with the Buccaneers, and now we think, he's going to fill in for Robbie Anderson greatly. And what does Brashad Perriman do his debut? 3 catches for 17 yards. And what did Robbie Anderson do? He had over 100 yards for the Carolina Panthers. It just drives you crazy that, the Jets, their defense didn't look good either. Josh Allen had all the time in the world. We're talking about how much pressure Sam Darnold's under. Josh Allen was sitting there waiting, looking like, you're not open yet. Don't worry, I have time. I'll get it to you as soon as you're open. Okay, now we'll go. And if not that, Josh Allen takes off. Josh Allen runs with the football when nothing is open and really shows his mobility. Did he have a bad fumble? Yes. Is Josh Allen a little out of whack, a little out of control sometimes? Yes. But he does make more plays than the Jets quarterback does in Sam Darnold. So the thing that it really, really concerns you going forward is Sam Darnold the guy. We won't know because of how bad Adam Gase has been as the head coach. And what I worry is that I don't think Adam Gase is making it through this year. I imagine that there will be another head coach for the New York Jets next season. That means that Sam Darnold will now have his 3rd offensive system in his 4 years as a quarterback, and that just isn't good, because it's going to be very hard for Sam Darnold to show improvement and show that he is the future at quarterback, that the Jets finally got that guy, if he has to learn yet another system. But he is going to have to learn another system, because it cannot be Adam Gase. I'm very concerned that Adam Gase is wasting Sam Darnold, and that the Jets might be wasting their very small window of opportunity here, because you know what? If Sam Darnold, let's just say the Jets get a new coach next year, and Darnold has a tremendous year, and now all of a sudden you have to think about, do you pay him, do you not pay him? If you were to think that Sam Darnold definitely is that guy, and you give him the kind of money that quarterbacks get in this league, you're going to mess up your cap situation. It is going to make it tougher for you to get talent around Sam Darnold and just talent all over the football field, which the Jets already lack to begin with. So not only do you need to know if Sam Darnold is the guy, you need to get a new coach. Your offensive line stinks. Your receivers stink. Your running back is hurt. Your defense is still a little questionable, especially in the pass rush and in your linebacker core with Avery Williamson missing this game. He missed all last year hurt. Now he's hurt again. We know C.J. Mosley opted out after being hurt last year. The corners is a little, up in the air. Some guys performed well, some guys didn't. Marcus May did well at safety. But there's just a lot of questions that have to be answered for this Jets team. And do you trust that the Jets are going to draft the right guys? So far, not so good. The one guy that got right, Jamal Adams, he's gone. So I find it hard to believe that even if Sam Darnold is the guy, that the Jets are going to make the right decisions around him and for this football team for them to be able to turn it around. So there's just so many concerns, and it's so frustrating because, you know what, if you're a Jet fan and you wait every single year just to see if this team shows you any improvement at all, and they never do. They're always losing games by a lot, and again, not showing you any improvement. This literally looks like week 18. You know what I mean? It looks like last season has continued because the team looks exactly the same. And the same can be said for the Giants. Not even a slither of improvement. I'm going to try my best not to overreact to week 1, but I just don't see any improvements. And I said this in the preview prediction. I don't see enough improvement in this team because even though you made some changes, you also lost some pieces. It's okay, we brought in Brashad Perriman and we brought in this player and that player, but you lost other guys on the flip side. So how much better are you really? You have the same coach if you're the Jets, so it's the same garbage play calling with the same bad results. So it definitely drives you crazy. And now the Jets, they get to play the San Francisco 49ers, and I've said I don't see that game going well, and I really, really, really don't see that game going well. Darnold is going to be under so much pressure. The 49ers, they had a disappointing loss to the Cardinals. They're going to be out for blood, and they're going to be all over the Jets, and that's going to be a very ugly game. And it just stinks that you're going to start the season on these negative notes, and like I said, that both of these teams have very tough schedules, and both of these teams aren't any good. So, I mean, the fact that they're not good and they have tough schedules, it just makes for a really bad year for both. To go around the rest of the NFL, let's go to the Sunday night game because that game got talked about probably the most out of, the whole slate of games. And the game between the Dallas Cowboys and the Los Angeles Rams that ended with the Rams winning 20-17. And there were two big storylines that everybody was talking about. Number one was the offensive pass interference called on Michael Gallup going up against Jalen Ramsey on the left sideline late in the game where the Dallas Cowboys are trying to make a comeback and maybe get a game-tying field goal. And was that offensive pass interference? I don't love that call. I really, really don't because Gallup and Ramsey, they're along the sideline. They're kind of fighting, which is normal between a receiver and a corner. They're trying to, fight for position, trying to get the ball. And they had their arms tied. So, you know what? Jalen's arm is kind of on Gallup, so he's trying to, get off him. And Gallup just kind of went like this. He didn't even go a full extension or a full push out off of Jalen Ramsey, but he kind of just gave a little bit of separation to catch the ball. And then Jalen Ramsey did this whole big flop, and the refs fell for it and threw the flag. I really didn't like that call at all. I think that's a play on. I didn't think it was anything egregious, nothing crazy where it's like, oh my gosh, what a push off by Michael Gallup. You have to throw the flag there. I don't love that. I really don't like officials deciding the end of games. I want to let the players dictate that. Now, do the Dallas Cowboys win in overtime? I don't know. You know what I mean? Because neither one of these teams played great, especially offensively. And you know what? The Dallas Cowboys, the other big storyline was Mike McCarthy going for it on 4th and 3. You're at the 11. You're pretty close to getting a touchdown. So you have an opportunity to tie the game, though. You're in the fourth quarter. He decides to go for it. The Cowboys do not convert. And that ended up being a really big deciding factor because they lost by 3 points. So you definitely do want to take the points when it is the fourth quarter, and it ties the game. That's the big thing for me. If the Cowboys were down by more than 3, I would go for it. But the fact that the Cowboys were down by just 3, I think you have to tie the game because if you did, you would have played for overtime, and who knows, maybe you would have won the game. So I definitely did not like that decision from Mike McCarthy. I definitely disagree with it. And again, it's not so much, where it was on the field or how many yards you had to go. It's more so the score in the game and what quarter it was in the game. I do think you have to take the points there. But that's just me. And Mike McCarthy's first game as head coach of the Dallas Cowboys, it wasn't great. But you know what? This was kind of a generic Cowboy game where you had Ezekiel Elliott go off. 22 carries, 96 yards. But like I said this all last year. And you know what? The same stuff happens. But you have Dak Prescott throw the ball 39 times, but Zeke only running 22 times. Ezekiel Elliott was having a really good game on the ground, but you want to pass the ball instead, and you lost the game. So I think that the Cowboys, their bread and butter is running the football, and I feel like you just have to, Zeke got the tattoo, feed me on his stomach. I think you do have to feed Zeke. I think you do have to keep giving him the ball and just reaping the benefits and win more games, have better field position, control time possession, help out your defense, and just win games. Because that's what Dallas has to do because they always underachieve despite the hype that they have going into seasons. So it looks like it could be a lot of the same stuff happening for them. And the other big storyline for Dallas was losing their tight end Blake Jarwin for the season, torn ACL. And their big-time linebacker, Lane Vander Esch, broken collarbone. He's going to have surgery, be out 6 to 8 weeks. So 2 big-time losses for Dallas. We'll see how they bounce back. As far as the Rams are concerned, I like that they had a much, much more balanced attack. They ran the ball even more than they passed the ball, which is really good because a lot of times for the Rams, it was the other way around. And Jared Goff, he's an okay quarterback. I think he benefits more from the Sean McVay system. So having him only throw it 31 times and, being able to get the ball on the ground to other running backs, running back by committee, whether it is Malcolm Brown or it is Akers, I think that using multiple running backs and just, if you see that it's working, don't go away from it. Keep using it. And that's exactly what Los Angeles did. And it won them the game because if they had Goff throw the ball too much, all of a sudden, again, you don't have as good field positioning. You can't get your field goals. You can't, control the game because then you give the Dallas Cowboys more opportunities. And with the talent that Dallas has on the offense, eventually they probably would have got it going. So I do like that the Rams, they did things a little differently in this game. And I want to see them do that going forward because you know what? They had a disappointing year last year after being in the Super Bowl the year before. They weren't even in the playoffs last year. So you do want to see the Rams definitely show some improvement. Keeping it, within the NFC West, let's talk about that Arizona Cardinals, San Francisco 49ers game. And like I said, this was a disappointing loss for the 49ers. Kyler Murray had a great game for Arizona. He's really showing a lot of promise, a lot of development as a dual threat quarterback. Whether it was passing the ball 26 for 40, 230 yards, or his 13 rushing attempts for 91 yards. So, he's seeing Kyler Murray do it both with his arm and his legs. That's why I like to see Darnold and Daniel Jones run the ball more, because that's the way football has gone now. A lot of these quarterbacks are running, and a lot of quarterbacks, that is what they do a lot. Kyler Murray almost ran the ball as many times as Kenyon Drake did, their running back. So, that tells you a lot about the way offenses think now. A young offensive mind head coach in Cliff Kingsbury. So, that's the way football is trending now. And I think that the Jets and Giants, they might have to move along with that trend. I think they really have to consider that. DeAndre Hopkins went off in his very first game as a member of the Cardinals. 14 catches, 151 yards. Houston Texans definitely, kicking themselves for getting rid of DeAndre Hopkins and not keeping him happy. Kind of the way the Jets, got Jamal Adams out of town. When you lose these star players and don't replace them with stars, things like this can happen. And when you look at the 49ers, I think it's interesting, looking at their rushing attack, not have Padilla anymore. Mostert was not that good on the ground. We know that he was a massive part of the way the 49ers were last season. And I think the other really, really big thing for the Niners is losing Emmanuel Sanders to the Saints. I think Emmanuel Sanders is a very underrated receiver, and he helped this 49ers team out a lot. And having Deebo Samuel be hurt, that is not good at all, because he allowed them to do a lot of different things with his speed. If you want to hand off to him, maybe some kind of reverse with the wide receiver coming around, it gave you a lot more possibilities on offense for Shanahan. So I do think that losing both of those players, that really changes their offense, because Garoppolo, although he wins games, he's not an amazing quarterback. So he does need some targets to throw to, and Mostert can only do so much. He had a long of 76. So other than that, even with George Kittle being out there, the 49ers did not get much going on in the passing attack. We knew that they're more of a running team. That's how they were last year. And it definitely was the case again in this game. And when you see the disparity in the offenses, seeing how Kyler Murray ran all over the Niners, Jimmy Garoppolo not moving out of the pocket. You see DeAndre Hopkins have a great game receiving, none of the 49ers receivers having a good game. It makes sense why the Cardinals would win that game. Next up, we have the Chargers and Bengals. This was a pretty weird one. We don't know exactly how both these teams are going to be. They're both two of the unknown, having new starting quarterbacks. Tyrod Taylor for the Los Angeles Chargers, and he didn't have a crazy game, 16 of 30, 208 yards. Austin Eckler had a good game on the ground, 19 carries for 84 yards. You'd like to see that. And the Chargers, again, did a good job of running the ball. They used the rushing attack to their benefit and didn't have Tyrod Taylor throw the ball too much, because if you do that, you're probably going to have a tough time, because Tyrod Taylor, you don't want him throwing the ball that much. You definitely, if your running game is working, you want to stick with it, because you don't really want to take your chances. Hunter Henry, Mike Williams had good games receiving. You expect a little more of Keenan Allen. But Joe Burrow making his debut as a member of the Bengals, and even though Joe Burrow was the number one pick, you do want to see the Bengals do a better job of protecting him, like we've talked about with Jones and Darnold. You need the offensive line, which obviously the Bengals don't have, and the Chargers do have a really good pass rush. Guys like Bosa and Ingram on the outside are the guys that really stand out. So you knew that Burrow was going to have a tough time, and that's exactly what happened. He got sacked 3 times in this game, but one thing Joe Burrow did do really well was running with the football. 8 attempts for 46 yards, a touchdown, long of 23. So again, quarterbacks being able to run. We don't see that with the New York quarterbacks like Darnold and Jones, and we really have got to see it more. Even if I think Daniel Jones definitely could do it. Sam Darnold, I'm not so sure about. He has a little bit of mobility, but nothing crazy. And I don't think you need anything crazy. I just think you need something different. You have to keep the defense on the edge. You have to give them something else to think about when they're deciding to make their coverages and the way they're sending their pass rush, especially if you have an offensive line that's struggling. The fact that Darnold and Jones, they get the ball and all of a sudden the pressure's in their face and they have to decide, do I want to make a bad, sketchy pass, or do I want to get sacked? The fact that you could try to, maneuver around and try to get at least a few yards, give yourself more manageable downs, because for the Giants, too many times it's 3rd and 13, 2nd and 8. Just these tough conversions for your team that you cannot keep drives going. That's why the Jets in the beginning of their game was punt, 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 because they can't get themselves anything consistent, anything that's like, okay, all we need is a couple yards and we can just keep the chains moving and build together a sustainable drive and march down the field. They can't do that because they can't get consistent positive yardage. And if you just scramble every now and then you could also break a big-time play, like the way Burrow did for 23 yards and gained the touchdown. You never know, because it could just be a lapse in the defense, maybe make a defender miss. They could miss a tackle, which we definitely see these teams do every now and then. So next game, Bears and the Lions. This was a weird game, as you had Mitchell Trubisky throwing for 3 touchdowns, and the Bears made a big comeback. You know what? The Lions, this was one that really, really drove me crazy, because we talk about trying to balance passing and running. Adrian Peterson, his first game around the Lions, has a great game. Vintage AP, 14 carries, 93 yards, 6.6 average, long of 21. But AP gets the ball 14 times, and Matthew Stafford throws it 42 times. And he threw an interception late. So you mean tell me that you have the lead late, and you're throwing the ball when Adrian Peterson is having a great game, one of the best running backs of all time, still has a little bit left in the tank, and you're not giving the ball to AP? I mean, it made no sense why the Lions were doing that. I mean, that really, it drives you nuts, because the Lions, they've been a team that they have not won in forever. I don't even remember the last time the Detroit Lions were in the playoffs. You know what I mean? So the Lions, I mean, they can't get things going if they continue to make silly mistakes like this and lose these easy games. And of course, DeAndre Swift drops the pass in the end zone, I mean, to win the game. I mean, why wouldn't you? Because you're the Detroit Lions. You know, these are just one of those very unlucky teams, like we talk about with the Jets and the Giants. And that drives you crazy, because the Bears didn't play great, but they did enough. You know, they kind of just stuck with it, and they did what they had to do to just win the game late. The fact that the Lions decided to make those big mistakes late, not giving the ball to AP, Stafford throwing the interception, and DeAndre Swift dropping the ball late at the end, that's how you lose games. I mean, there's no other way around it. There's not much analysis you need to decipher that one. The next game that was also a weird time ending was the way that the Philadelphia Eagles lose to the Washington football team 27-17. The Eagles had the lead in this game of 17-0, and Washington comes back with 27 unanswered. Now, the big thing for the Eagles is, once again, a lot of injuries. You know what I mean? The fact that Zach Ertz only 3 catches for 18 yards. You look at, no one else really did anything crazy, especially running the ball for Philadelphia. And Carson Wentz throws 2 interceptions and gets sacked 8 times by Washington. So far, the draft choice of getting someone like Chase Young, that makes a big difference, because you know what? When you put the combination of Chase Young plus Ryan Kerrigan plus Montez Sweat, I mean, Kerrigan had 2 sacks this game, and you had Chase Young 1.5, Montez Sweat a sack. So you have all these big-time defensive linemen coming at you. The fact that the Eagles have injuries on their offensive line, though, they pride themselves on having a good O-line. They've invested a lot of money in their offensive line, but you don't have those guys out there. Carson Wentz is in a lot of trouble, and Philadelphia is just another of those teams you really cannot figure out, and that's about as bad a loss as you can get. And I just think that it is so weird, because similar to that, the next game I want to go to is the Jaguars beating the Colts. That's another upset. The Colts really should win this game. You know, Phillip Rivers has a pretty good game, but like any Phillip Rivers game, 1 touchdown to 2 interceptions. Phillip Rivers, as good of the numbers as he may put up, 36 out of 46 for 363 yards. Great game. But down the stretch, late in games, he never makes the big play, and he turns the ball over too much. And that's exactly what happened for the Colts. I mean, when you turn the ball over twice and Gardner Minshew only misses 1 pass, that's how you win football games. So you have to give a ton of credit to the Jaguars, a team that they have completely gotten rid of everybody. They've shipped everybody out. Looks like they have no talent left, that the Jaguars have no interest in competing, that they don't want to win a game. But they did, and what I like about the Jaguars winning and Washington winning is that these teams have very little expectations. They were underdogs in this game, but the sheer excitement that they had when they did win the games. You can't just say that these teams are tanking when you see how happy they were that they won and how hard they tried, that even though these teams were down, like Washington, that they didn't just give up. The fact that they're willing to fight back and beat these teams that were supposed to win, you have to give a lot of credit to those teams. I've always been for Ron Rivera. I think he's a really good coach. I think the Giants should have hired him, but you know what? That would be a good thing to do. And you could just see that the teams, they rally around these head coaches. And that the fact that Washington was able to win and Jackson was able to win, I think both those games were big deals. Another one that was kind of a interesting game was the Raiders beating the Panthers 34-30. Derek Carr had a pretty good game. That was nice to see. Josh Jacobs, big game on the ground, having 3 touchdowns. You know, Derek Carr throwing the ball 30 times. Jacobs running the ball 25 times. Nice balance on your offense, you know, trying to pass it as much as you run it, especially if Josh Jacobs is having a good game. So I do like that. Henry Ruggs had a decent game, first game in the NFL. You're throwing it to Darren Waller. Josh Jacobs also in the receiving game. So they did a lot of good things. Teddy Bridgewater, he had a pretty good game too, and Christian McCaffrey had a good game. But you know what? It just wasn't enough. Despite Robbie Anderson having a good game, the Raiders were able to, just win the game at the end. So I think you have to give Las Vegas credit for that because they're a team that my expectations for them are not high either. The Panthers, far too often they were settling for field goals in this game. I mean, you really got to be able to finish off your drives because even though Bridgewater had plenty of yards and McCaffrey had plenty of yards and Robbie Anderson, all these guys, if you don't put the ball in the end zone and you're just playing for 3 points, what was the good of all those positive plays leading up to it? So Matt Rule, as great as people think he is, you expect more out of him. So we'll see how the Panthers do going forward. The next game that was a pretty big one was the Patriots defeating the Miami Dolphins. And there's two big things for me. Number one, Ryan Fitzpatrick only having 191 passing yards and 3 interceptions. I think you have to keep a very close eye on Fitzpatrick. He's inconsistent. Even though Fitzpatrick had 3 interceptions this week, he could have 4 touchdowns next week. I mean, that is the kind of hot and cold that Ryan Fitzpatrick is. What you have to look out for is that if Fitz continues to struggle, when do you make the move to Tua? Because I think that eventually you just have to see what you have. And if you made the right pick, because you need to know early. You don't want to be like the Jets where you may pass up opportunities to get other quarterbacks, but you think that you have the guy when you really don't. So I think that sooner or later the Dolphins are going to have to make that move. And you talk about balance. How about Cam Newton in this game? Only 15 on 19 for 155 yards, but the 15 carries for 75 yards and the 2 rushing touchdowns. He looked like vintage Cam Newton running the football. And we were unsure if Cam still had anything left in the tank, you know what I mean? After his injury, nobody really wanted him. He remained unsigned for a very long time. But Cam Newton showed us that he definitely still has plenty in the tank. And with the kind of defense that Bill Belichick is still the head coach, so you know that these other guys like Stephon Gilmore and the rest of their defense is going to step up and make it really hard on opposing offenses. If the fact that the Patriots are playing good defense and Cam Newton is managing the game, not only throwing but running, the Patriots are still going to be a pretty good team. So I think they're definitely a team you have to watch out for. You can't just ride them off because Tom Brady is gone. Now let's go to Tom Brady next. I mean, the game between the Saints and the Buccaneers, this was a big game for both teams. And Tom Brady, despite, getting the touchdown on the first drive of the game, after that, didn't look so great. Having a couple of interceptions, getting sacked 3 times. Brady's not used to that. Always having good offensive line protection because of the great coaching of New England. And the fact that Tom Brady was missing some passes, that's not like him. And I thought that down the stretch last year, Brady really didn't look like himself. He threw pick sixes. That happened in this game as well. It just looked like his ball has too much loft on it. Like, it's not crisp. He leaves it in the air too long. That allows defenders to get to it. His arm strength looks like it definitely is declining. I mean, he's in his 40s, so it's not going to increase if it would only decrease. Despite all the talent that Tampa Bay has, you can't just automatically pick them to go to the Super Bowl because the New Orleans Saints, they're in their division, and the Saints are still really, really good. I mean, you have Drew Brees, who didn't have that crazy a game, but the fact that their defense played well, and you had Latavius Murray stepping up and Kamara stepping up. They just do a lot of different things offensively. They're a smart team, and they made the necessary plays they had to beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So I do think that was a very interesting game, and we'll see how the season goes for those two teams. Next game was the Green Bay Packers defeating the Minnesota Vikings 43-34. And this was a big game for Aaron Rodgers. 32 out of 44, 364 yards, and 4 TDs against a Vikings defense that normally is pretty good. Kirk Cousins, he threw a couple of touchdowns, but they just couldn't keep up with the Green Bay attack. And I think that Aaron Rodgers is going to be a very motivated player this year with the Green Bay Packers selecting Jordan Love. The fact that the Packers defense was so bad in the NFC Championship game and they could have addressed their defense in the first round, but instead decided to take a backup quarterback, I think Aaron Rodgers said, you think I'm done? Wait until you see this. So I think you're going to see a big year out of Aaron Rodgers as long as he's healthy. And you know what? He started off on a really high note for the Green Bay Packers. Next game was the Seahawks and the Falcons. The Seahawks offense was really, really good. Russell Wilson was extremely efficient. 31 out of 35 for 322 yards, 4 TDs. DK Metcalf had a good game in the receiving. Russell Wilson's just flat out one of the best players in all of the NFL. And he had a really good game against this Atlanta defense. And the Falcons, the 54 passing attempts for Matt Ryan. Are you kidding me? Only 14 carries for Todd Gurley, who had a pretty good game, all in all. And Todd Gurley didn't get the ball enough with Los Angeles when Goff wanted to throw it like crazy. And the fact that Matt Ryan wanted to throw it 54 times, I didn't love that. He had the 450 yards, but you threw it that many times. He got sacked twice, threw a pick, so I don't think that was great play calling from Atlanta. but their defense has got to be better. You can't allow Russell, even though as good as Russell Wilson is, you can't allow him to be that efficient, just pick and point where he wants, because that's going to be game over. And that's exactly what happened in that one. And then you had the first game of the season, which was the Chiefs and the Texans. And the Chiefs showed that they picked up right where they left off, and that is having a tremendous offense led by Patrick Mahomes, who had 3 touchdowns. Clyde Edwards, huge game, 138 yards on the ground as a rookie. So I think that if Clyde Edwards is establishing a great run game, the Chiefs are absolutely unstoppable. So I think that he's going to be the guy to watch, because we know the Chiefs can pass the ball. We know their defense could be good enough. But if they have a run game like that, you can't beat them. You really, really can't. So that was definitely a nice way to start the season for the Chiefs as far as defending their Super Bowl crown. The only game that's still left is the Broncos and the Tennessee Titans. Right now it's 7-7. You know, that game has been a really slow one. Not great quarterback play. You don't expect that out of Denver. I'm not high on them at all. I don't really trust Drew Lock. I don't trust their offense at all. And their defense is holding in there without having Von Miller. And Derrick Henry's having a big game on the ground. But Ryan Tannehill, nothing crazy yet. So we'll see how that game's end up finishing out. But let's go to week 2 and make some picks here. So the first game, we'll talk about the Jets and 49ers. I have the 49ers winning this game, and I have them winning it pretty big because, again, we saw just how inept the Jets are, and the 49ers are still a really good team. They're going to be all over Sam Darnold with how bad their run game is, with how bad their pass protection is. They have no receivers, so I just think that the 49ers are going to give them such a tough time. The Jets are going to turn the ball over, give the 49ers short field position, and the 49ers are just going to have their way with the Jets. So I say the 49ers definitely winning that one. Next game, Buffalo Bills against Miami Dolphins. Dolphins didn't look great against the Patriots. Bills still looked really good. I am high on the Bills, so I definitely have the Bills winning that game against the Dolphins, no problem. Next game is Giants-Bears. I still think the Giants should win this game. It's going to be pretty close, but I think that the Giants' offense is good enough that they could score the points and just not allow Mitch Trubisky to go off. That's kind of more of a hope, if anything, because the Giants lose the game against the Bears. I mean, their season's over because they have so many tougher teams after that. They really can't afford to lose that game. They have got to at least win that one. So I do have the Giants winning that game. Next game, Packers-Lions. This is no contest to me. I have the Packers winning this game in Lambeau Field. Aaron Rodgers, he went off. The Lions, obviously, they still have not shown me any improvement at all. And like I said, I think Aaron Rodgers is just very motivated. This is a pretty good Green Bay team. So I have the Packers winning that. Next game, Buccaneers against the Carolina Panthers. I think after having a lousy showing for Tampa Bay, they've got to be better than that. Teddy Bridgewater's offense should not beat Tom Brady and all this talent that Tampa Bay has. They better win that game, no doubt. Because if they lose that, I mean, people will really have questions about them early on. Next game is the Ravens versus the Texans. And normally you kind of would like to lean Texans here, but when you look at the way the game went between these teams last year, the Ravens blew them out of the water. You know, they had Deshaun Watson having a really tough time, and Lamar Jackson got whatever he wanted. The Ravens had a really good game against the Browns, winning 38-6. So the Ravens look like they're kind of picking up right where they left off. Good offense, good enough defense. And I think that the Ravens are just the better all-around team. And obviously the Texans don't have DeAndre Hopkins anymore. So I really have the Ravens winning that game against Houston. The next game is the Cleveland Browns going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Thursday Night Football. And the Cincinnati Bengals, they're still not any good. And the Browns have so much talent. They just can't keep losing games. They have to win this one. I mean, primetime game. And I just think the Bengals aren't that good. So the Cleveland Browns should win that game. The next game is the Pittsburgh Steelers going up against the Denver Broncos. I just talked about how I'm not high on the Broncos at all, and I think the Steelers are going to have a pretty good year this year. And you know what? At Heinz Field, definitely give me the Steelers in that game. No doubt about it. Shouldn't even be close. Next game is the Dallas Cowboys going up against the Atlanta Falcons. And Dallas, I think that after having that disappointing loss, I think they do have to beat the Falcons in this game. I think this one's going to be pretty close too. But I am leaning Dallas trying to win this. The next game is the Tennessee Titans going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I have the Titans winning this game, but I have the Jaguars covering. I mean, I think 10 points is kind of pushing it, especially with the way the Titans offense doesn't look great so far in this Monday night game. And the fact that Gardner Minshew had such a great game and the defense was good enough, I think you give the Jaguars at least a little bit of a chance. Even though the Titans win, the Jaguars will keep it pretty close. So I definitely think the Jaguars, for the spread purposes, but the Titans winning the game. Next game, give me the Rams over the Eagles. I know the Eagles are 1-point favorites here, but I really like the Rams better. I think if the Eagles are, assuming that the Eagles have the same injury problems that they did, I really don't see the Eagles beating the Rams, so definitely give me Los Angeles for that one. Next game is Minnesota Vikings against the Indianapolis Colts. I'm going to pick the Vikings in this one because for the Colts, them losing Mac is a huge deal. I mean, Mac is a very underrated player, and now the Colts, they don't really have much of a running attack, and like I said, I don't trust Phillip Rivers laying games. I think the Vikings defense is going to put enough pressure on Phillip Rivers to where he's going to turn the ball over again. And I think that the Vikings, not having to play Green Bay, that they're going to win this game. The next game is the Arizona Cardinals against the Washington football team. And even though Washington had an impressive win, I am more impressed by what I saw by the Arizona Cardinals, with their combination of talent between Murray and DeAndre Hopkins, Kenyon Drake, Cliff Kingsbury as the coach. And they have just enough on defense. Also, obviously, still have Larry Fitzgerald. So, give me the Arizona Cardinals winning that. The next one is the Kansas City Chiefs going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. And obviously, I have the Chiefs winning that game. The Chargers, they're not that great. And the Chiefs, like I said, they still are really, really good. So, give me the Chiefs next. This next game, Sunday Night Football, it's pretty tough. New England, Seattle, but I'm going to go with Seattle. I mean, if Tom Brady was there, maybe I'm picking Patriots, but I just think that Russell Wilson is just so good. This game is in Seattle, so I'm taking the Seahawks for this one. And the last game, Monday Night Football, Saints-Raiders. Give me the Saints. I know the Raiders had a pretty good game, but the Saints are still a very, very good team, so I have the Saints winning that game. So that is the Week 1 recap. That is the Week 2 predictions. Now, let's talk about the Mets. And you know what? The Mets, they frustrate you because it's like the same garbage where they give you 18 runs on Friday. It looks like the offense is clicking. Alonso has it going. Ramos has it going. It looks like everybody is stepping up and being the players that they're supposed to be all along. This offense looks like it's finally turning it around. And what do they do the following 2 games? Absolutely nothing. Alonso goes back to chasing. Wilson Ramos goes back to hitting double plays and not being productive at all. They go back to not hitting with runners on base. The pitching, the bullpen is still awful. So, the Mets, they really just drive you absolutely nuts. Saturday, they should have won that game easily with as much as Robbie Ray has struggled this year. Of course, they didn't. They had countless opportunities, wasted them. Wasted countless opportunities on Sunday. The bullpen blew it. Brad Brock walked the ballpark. Jared Hughes was awful again, just like always. So, obviously the Mets had to lose that game as well and just come out losing the series. And they've dug themselves such a hole that, forget it. I'm so done with the Mets. I'm not even going to make a video on them anymore. They're not worth my time. They're not worth your time. They're not worth anybody's time. It's not even worth watching them anymore. That is how bad and frustrating the Mets are. Because as soon as those they have a good game, they proceed to just lose the next couple of games and just erase the good game that they had. Even though it looks like Steve Cohen's going to have the team, he has so much work he has to do. I'm not getting excited until the Mets are in the playoffs. Because even if Steve Cohen signs the right guys, how do we know they're going to work out? How many guys have the Mets gotten that we said, oh, this is a big move, and they never turn out to be any good? So until the Mets actually do start to, win games in the postseason, not the regular season, the postseason, then I'll be happy about Steve Cohen. I can't get crazy over something that, I haven't seen any wins yet. So we'll see how that goes for them. The Yankees looks like they're kind of on track, winning the games against Baltimore. Although the series wasn't amazing, because the games were still very close. They went to extra innings. They were down to the wire. The Yankees had to get a big hit late, whether it's Luke Voigt or it's Gleyber Torres. The game should have been that close. What is positive for the Yankees is that the pitching was better, particularly Garrett Cole, because Cole had been struggling so far this season. We know how much money the Yankees paid him. We know the expectations they have for him. So that we really expect more out of Garrett Cole, and the fact that he was able to finally step up, that is big for the Yankees. If they could get him going, they'll definitely be a much better team. They get, Urshela back and then eventually Judge and Stanton back, and we'll see how the Yankees do in the postseason. But as far as the Islanders are concerned, it's been a very, very upsetting series because they've had chances to win these games, especially the one they lost in overtime. And their most recent game, the Islanders have the Islanders take the lead. Then all of a sudden, boom, the Lightning get back-to-back goals, within the matter of 8 seconds. So you really just can't let that happen on defense. And now the Islanders have themselves in a 3-1 hole. And it's going to be hard to come back from it. It's going to be really, really tough. But, they've shown a lot of fights so far, throughout this whole, run ever since the NHL has come back. So we'll see how they do. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know it's a long one, but you know what? There's a lot of sports going on right now because you could watch a football game, a hockey game, a baseball game, and a basketball game all at the same time. I mean, when have we ever seen that? So it definitely has been crazy. We've kind of been enjoying it. You know, the fact that the sports are on, our teams, meaning my teams, they've not played well, but all I can do is hope for the next one. So until that next one, be safe, be smart, be healthy, and have a good one, everyone.